Mohamad Abouchalbak. You are CEO of SFO Capital Partners. Thank you for joining us on BiTV.
Luc, thank you very much for having me here with you.
So you have just sold 17 Hoche, 17 Hoche in Paris to Deka Immobilien for more than 30,000 euros per square meter. Could you please tell us more about this deal and how it fits in your strategy?
Thank you for your question, Luc Etienne. I'm not sure, I can't really comment on the price at which we sold this building on. It's definitely a very interesting price. It sets new record in the Parisian market. All I can say for you is that what historically was a psychological barrier on a metric price has been exceeded. That said, Hoche, 17 Hoche is a typical transaction that SFO Capital Partners tend to invest in, where we identify starved asset in prime locations, in prime cities, and Paris being one of them. Very early on, this is an asset we had identified and which we had acquired at very interesting valuations. And I think that our hands-on approach to asset management allowed us in a very challenging environment. I mean, we went through Gilets jaunes, we went through COVID during our holding period, and we were able to quickly turn around, restructure the asset into a grade A environmental friendly asset suitable for a tenant such as Avisa Partners, who's a tenant that has signed a long-term lease on this asset and eventually exit the asset to an institutional such as Deka Immobilien. So for us, it is definitely a case study, but it's also a typical investment that we will be doing, whether it's in Paris, key German cities, London, and some other European markets that we focus on. Obviously, this is an asset that we have done in partnership. This is an investment that we have completed in partnership with L'Etoile Properties that acted as our operating partner and with whom we were able to deliver alpha returns on.
Great. And now that this deal is done, the question maybe is, what role do you see France play into your real estate strategy going forward?
For us, well, we're based in London and we do invest globally. We invest in the US, where we're very active on the housing market. And we invest in Europe, where we're active on the commercial value add space, as well as the residential space. On the commercial value add space, France is a core focus for us, more particularly Paris, where we have been very active in sourcing transactions. And we've been very active in expanding our footprint. And hopefully very soon we'll be announcing some interesting new transactions that will be completing in Paris. So Paris for us remains core. We like the Paris CBD. We have strong conviction about both its leasing, the low leasing risk and the high liquidity in the market. So for us, when we look at Paris, it's more about execution. This is the key risk, and it's one that we manage very well. We manage well due to our hands-on approach, due to the fact that we are present on the ground, and due to the fact that we typically partner with high qualified operating partners that can deliver on their business plans. So Paris, yes, high area of focus, but similarly, we're extremely focused on German cities where we have done extremely well. We're also focused on London, where we continue on acquiring assets. We're in the process of developing a grade A office building off Berkeley Square in the center of London, and we're currently acquiring a secondary value-add asset not far from the center of London as well. So London is of interest. And then after Paris, London, and Germany, there are other markets we looked at. For instance, on the residential side, we've entered into the Dublin residential market, where we've acquired single-family rentals. And we believe there is definitely room to do much more in Dublin, where there's a clear supply and demand imbalance for residential, PRS, residential, multifamily, call it what you want. As long as you can provide a roof that is suitable for rental, there is demand for it, and we'd like to play a role in the Irish market on that front.
Okay. Speaking of residential, you have alluded to it earlier that you have been very active on the housing market in the US, and if I understand correctly, you have recently acquired a 6,000 housing unit in the US. Do you plan to invest on European residential market as well? You're talking about Dublin. Do you see yourself maybe being active on the continental European front on the residential market?
Thank you for the question. In the US, we've started investing in the multifamily housing, which is the equivalent of, call it PRS in the UK. We started investing in 2014, where we've acquired our first asset, and since then we've been accumulating assets to a point where we've acquired our last asset a couple of months ago in Houston, Texas. It's an interesting dynamic, the US. It's a much more mature market compared to Europe. We've accumulated 6,000 units, and these are units that, even in the midst of the pandemic, remained occupied at very high levels. We're talking 95% loss in occupancy, and collection levels have been very high. So it's a much more mature market. The product itself is different. There is significantly more space in the US to develop amenities around the residential units, and I guess the weather is different. So clearly, with the weather comes the swimming pool, comes the gym, indoor, outdoor. So the spaces are different. That said, the trend is clearly reaching Europe, and we have seen in Dublin, for instance, an increased trend in the renting population and significant demand, to the extent that we're talking about thousands of units every year in undersupply. So for us, what we had seen in the US initially, we're starting to see in Europe, but we're at a different stage. We're at a different stage in the type of product, and we're at a different stage in the type of the demand. So Dublin has been an entry for us, but definitely we look at Greater Europe, we look at other markets that have a young population that is more prone to being a renting population as opposed to buying, a more mobile population. So we have clear ambitions in growing our residential footprint. I can name a few markets that we'd like to invest in. We'd like to invest more in the UK, where we've around large cities. We also are keen on looking at the Italian market and northern Italy more particularly on the residential side. The same applies to Spain and Madrid in more specific. So yes, we do have plans to grow our residential footprint in Europe. We've started with Dublin, and we've only started with Dublin. Dublin has still significant room, and we have plans for Dublin, but we are active. But residential is not the only sector. I mean, for us, it's office, value add office that we understand extremely well, and we manage the risk and the delivery and execution risk of due to our hands-on asset management. In parallel, residential, where we have built a large platform and we're expanding it into Europe. And last but not least, obviously, light industrial and logistics, where we have seen definitely pockets of opportunities in specific transportation hubs across Europe.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time and for your insight, and thank you all for joining us, and see you soon on BiTV.
Thank you very much.